Chapter 3. Mother packed an equally large suitcase for Jonas. It dwarfed his small, thin frame, and he had to carry it with both hands, bending backward to lift it off the floor. He didn't complain of the weight or ask for help. The sound of breaking glass and china wailed through the house in quick intervals. We found our mother in the dining room smashing all of our best crystal and china on the floor. Her face glistened with sweat, and her golden ringlets fell loose over her eyes. "Mama, no!" cried Jonas, running toward the broken shards that littered the floor. I pulled him back before he could touch the glass. "Mother, why are you breaking your beautiful things?" I asked. She stopped and stared at the china cup in her hand. "Because I love them so much." She threw the cup to the floor, not even pausing to see it break before reaching for another. Jonas began to cry. "Don't cry, darling. We'll get much nicer things." The door burst open and 3 NKVD officers entered our house, carrying rifles with bayonets. "What's happened here?" demanded a tall officer, surveying the damage. "It was an accident," Mother replied calmly. "You have destroyed Soviet property," he bellowed. Jonas pulled his suitcase close, fearful that any minute it, too, might become Soviet property. Mother looked in the foyer mirror to affix her loose curls and put on her hat. The NKVD officer slammed her in the shoulder with the butt of his rifle, throwing her face first into the mirror. "Bourgeois pigs, always wasting time. You won't need that hat," he scoffed. Mother righted and steadied herself, smoothing her skirt and adjusting her hat. "Pardon me," she said flatly. To the officer before fixing her curls again and sliding her pearl hat pin into place. "Pardon me? Is that really what she said? These men burst into her home at night, slammed her into the mirror, and she asked them to pardon her?" Then she reached for it, the long gray coat, and suddenly I understood. She was playing the Soviet officers like a careful hand of cards, not quite sure what might be dealt next. I saw her in my mind sewing jewelry, papers, silver, and other valuables into the coat under the lining. "I have to use the bathroom," I announced, trying to divert attention from my mother and the coat. "You have 30 seconds. I shut the bathroom door and caught sight of my face in the mirror. I had no idea how quickly it was to change, to fade. If I had known, I would have stared at my reflection, memorizing it. It was the last time I would look into a real mirror for more than a decade. Chapter 4. The street lamps had been turned off. It was nearly black in the road. The officers marched behind us, forcing us to keep pace with them. I saw Mrs. Raskinus peer out of her curtains, and the moment she saw me looking, she disappeared. Mother nudged at my arm, which meant that I should keep my head down. Jonas was having a hard time carrying his suitcase. It was banging against his shins. "Davai!" commanded an officer. Hurry, always hurry. We marched into the intersection of the street toward a large dark object. It was a truck surrounded by more NKVD. As we approached the rear of the vehicle, I saw people sitting inside on their luggage. "Boost me up before they do," Mother whispered quickly, not wanting an officer to touch her coat. I did as she asked. The officers pushed Jonas up. He fell on his face, his luggage thrown on top of him. I made it without falling, but when I stood up, a woman looked at me and clasped her hand to her mouth. "Lena, dear, button your coat," Mother instructed. I looked down and saw my flowered nightgown. In the rush and search for my sketchbook, I had forgotten to change. I also saw a tall, wiry woman with a pointy nose looking at Jonas, Miss Grebus. She was a spinster teacher from school, one of the strict ones. I recognized a few others, too, the librarian, the owner of a nearby hotel, and several men I had seen with Papa speaking on the street. We were all on the list. I didn't know what the list was, only that we were on it. Apparently, so were the other 15 people sitting with us. The back gate of the truck slammed shut, and a low moan came from a bald man in front of me. "We're all going to die. We will surely die." "Nonsense," said Mother quickly. "But we will." This is the end. The truck began to move, jerking forward quickly, throwing people off their seats. The bald man suddenly scrambled up, climbed the inside wall of the truck, and jumped out. He smashed into the pavement, letting out a roar of pain like an animal caught in a trap. People in the truck screamed, and the tires screeched to a halt, and the officers leapt out. They opened the back gate, and I saw the man writhing in pain on the ground. They lifted him up and hurled his crumpled body back into the truck. One of his legs looked mangled. Jonas buried his face in Mother's sleeve, and I slipped my hand into his. He was shaking. My vision blurred. I squeezed my eyes shut and then opened them. The truck jerked forward, moving once again. "No!" the man wailed, holding his leg. The truck stopped in front of the hospital. Everyone seemed relieved that they would tend to the bald man's injuries, but they did not. They were waiting. A woman who was also on the list was giving birth to a baby. As soon as the umbilical cord was cut, they would both be thrown into the truck. Chapter 5. Nearly 4 hours passed, and we sat in the dark in front of the hospital, unable to leave the vehicle. Other trucks passed, some with people covered in large restraining nets. The streets began to buzz with activity. "We were early," one of the men commented to Mother. He looked at his watch. "It's nearing 3 now." The bald man lying on his back turned his face toward Jonas. "Boy, put your hands over my mouth and pinch my nose. Don't let go." "He will do nothing of the sort," said Mother, pulling Jonas close. "Foolish woman. Don't you realize this is just the beginning? We have a chance now to die with dignity." "Elena," a voice hissed from the street, and I saw Mother's cousin Regina hiding in the shadows. "Have you any relief now that you're on your back?" Mother asked the bald man. "Elena!" The voice appeared again, a little louder. "Mother, I think she's calling you," I whispered, eyeing the NKVD smoking on the other side of the truck. "She's not calling me. She's a crazy woman," Mother said loudly. "Be on your way. Leave us alone," she yelled. "But Elena, Mother turned her head and pretended she was deep in conversation with me, completely ignoring her cousin. A small bundle bounced into the bed of the truck near the man. His hand grabbed for it greedily. "And you speak of dignity, sir," said Mother. She snapped the bundle out of his hands and put it under her legs. I wondered what was in the package. How could Mother call her own cousin a crazy woman? Regina had taken a great risk to find her. "You are the wife of Kostas Filkas, provost at the university?" asked a man in a suit sitting down from us. Mother nodded, wringing her hands. And then we have a flashback. I watched as Mother twisted her palms. Murmurs rose and fell in the dining room. The men had been sitting for hours. "Sweetheart, take them the fresh pot of coffee," said Mother. I walked to the edge of the dining room. A cloud of cigarette smoke hovered over the table, held captive by the closed windows and drapes. "Repatriate, if they can get away with it," said my father, stopping abruptly when he saw me in the doorway. "Would anyone like more coffee?" I asked, holding up the sterling pot. Some men looked down, and someone coughed. "Lena, you're turning into quite a young lady," said a friend of my father's from the university. "And I hear that you're a very talented artist." "Indeed, she is. She has a very unique style, and she's exceptionally smart," he added with a wink. "So she takes after her mother, then," joked one of the men. Everyone laughed. "Tell me, Lena," said the man who wrote for the newspaper, "what do you think of the new Lithuania?" "Well," interrupted my father quickly, "that's not really a conversation for a young girl, now is it?" "It'll be conversation for everyone, Kostas, young and old," said the journalist. "Besides," he said, smiling, "it's not as if I'd printed in the paper." Papa shifted in his chair. "What do I think of the Soviets' annexation?" I paused, avoiding eye contact with my father. "I think Joseph Stalin is a bully, and I think we should push his troops out of Lithuania. They shouldn't be allowed to come and take what they please, and that's enough, Lena. Leave the pot of coffee and join your mother in the kitchen." "But it's true. It's not right. Enough," said my father. I returned to the kitchen, stopping short to eavesdrop. "Don't encourage her, Vladas. This girl is so headstrong it scares me to death," said Papa. "Well," replied the journalist. Now we see how she takes after her father, don't we? You've raised a real partisan, Costas. Papa was silent. The gathering ended, and the men left the house at alternating intervals, some through the front door and some through the back. The university? Said the bald man, still wincing with pain. Oh, well, he's long gone then. My stomach contracted like someone had punched me, and Jonas turned a desperate face to Mother. Actually, I work at the bank, and I saw your father just this afternoon, said a man, smiling at Jonas. I knew he was lying. Mother gave the man a grateful nod. Saw him on his way to the grave, then, said the surly bald man. I glared at him, wondering how much glue it would take to keep his mouth shut. I'm a stamp collector, a simple stamp collector, and they're delivering me to my death because I correspond internationally with other collectors. A university man would certainly be near the top of the list for... Shut up, I blurted. Lena, you must apologize immediately. This poor gentleman is in terrible pain. He doesn't know what he's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, the man replied, staring at me. The hospital doors opened, and a great cry erupted from within. An NKVD officer dragged a barefoot woman in a bloodied hospital gown down the steps. My baby, please don't hurt my baby, she screamed. Another officer walked out carrying a swaddled bundle, and a doctor came running, grabbing the officer. Please, you cannot take the newborn. It won't survive. Sir, I beg you, please, yelled the doctor. The officer turned to the door and kicked the heel of his boot into the doctor's kneecap. They lifted the woman into the truck. Mother and Miss Grebus scrambled to make room for her lying next to the bald man. The baby was handed up. Lena, please, Mother said, passing the pink child to me. I held the bundle and instantly felt the warmth of its little body penetrating through my coat. Oh, God, please, my baby, cried the woman, looking up at me. The child let out a soft cry, and its fists pummeled the air. Its fight for life had begun.